Hi, I'm Bill Javetsky with the McKinsey Quarterly. Today I'm speaking with Adam Werbach. His new book is called Strategy for Sustainability.
Bill, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Let's talk about the title of your book, Strategy for Sustainability, a Business Manifesto. Let's talk about sustainability. That has to be one of the most overused and ill-defined terms in the business lexicon these days. We used to talk about sustainable earnings on a company's balance sheet, and then it seemed to take on some green connotations along the way. In your work and in your book, what do you mean by sustainability?
Well, sustainability in a business sense is sustained earnings. It's long-term profitability. And there's no caveats to that. That is what it means. In 1987, the United Nations came out with the Brundtland Report, which stated that sustainable development is meeting the needs of current generations without compromising the needs of future generations to have their needs met, which is a very reasonable definition from a societal standpoint. And it very quickly became conflated with many of the important global environmental issues we were facing, like climate change and lack of potable water. But it somehow lost that business context and that business understanding. So in recent years, as businesses have taken on sustainability, not just as a compliance issue or a philanthropic issue, but as a core issue, what they've lacked is a new definition of sustainability that actually goes right back to the same core, which is doing this because it creates sustained earnings. And what I've tried to do with the book is create an explanation, a logic flow for how businesses can use the new concept of sustainability in order to be around for the long term.
You write in your book that Hurricane Katrina was a kind of an epiphany for you.
With 1,800 people killed, with a society shut down by the forces of nature, it really struck me that what we were doing in the environmental movement wasn't enough, and that while the aid that we had tried to get there hadn't worked, it was actually the trucks from Walmart that was able to reach the survivors before the federal government. And putting those two things together, for me, it seemed like we needed to find a way to attach the ingenuity and innovation of the corporate world to some of the global challenges that the world faces. And that maybe there was a two-way deal here, was that corporations would receive a way to become much more flexible, innovative, energetic, purpose-driven, and sustainable in the sense of being long-term profitable. But the world would receive a really strong extra set of arms.
The book has a series of network mappings and frameworks and other sort of consultancy approaches to this topic. But at its core is this idea of taking a long-term strategy around economic and social, cultural issues within a company. How do companies break away from business as usual approach in order to implement this kind of a strategic framework?
Well, the first thing is to set up a strategy for sustainability and clearly articulate that you're going to be around for the long haul and you're making your decisions based on that. And while most CEOs and boards make that as lip service, truly articulating it and proving it to the organization through actions. Some of the things that can represent that is one is changing from this concept of BHAGs, or big, hairy, audacious goals, which are largely internal profitability goals, to what are more like North Star goals. These are goals that tie directly to a great human challenge. They're goals that can be solved in 5 to 15 years. They're connected to the core of the business. They're actionable by everyone in the organization. And there's something that connects to the strengths of the organization as well. In the case of Toyota, building more innovative cars, more fuel-efficient cars that don't crash is something that consumers want. In the case of Walmart, driving waste out of the system lowers prices for consumers. So these North Star goals are not about just doing something nice for a CSR report. They're about driving efficiency through the business, innovation through the business, by connecting to the massive changes that are happening in society today.
Is there a tension between that sort of long-term focus and short-term focus?
There is, and to acknowledge that is wise. I was, heartened, and not to say that there's too much of a silver lining here, but during the recent financial turmoil, many CFOs refused to give guidance. They just refused to do it for the first time in a long time. And I hope they flex that muscle more because the analysts accepted it. They understood that it was irrational to try to do it within times of such change. And anyone who believes that the next 10 years isn't going to be much more traumatic for the world than the last 10 years, the next 50 years much more traumatic than the last 50 years, I think is fooling themselves.
Now that the economic crisis is front of mind for most executives, Do you think it will slow down this process? Do you think that sustainability becomes more of a luxury than a necessity in this era?
Well, sustainability is the business. So the question is, how do you sustain your business for the long term? So if that's not your goal, then and I think that's probably the case for for some CEOs, then I think they should pass on it, and they are. There was certainly a green bubble built up in 2007 and 2008. And we're seeing the deflation of that right now. And I think that's a very, very healthy thing. I think that those companies that jumped into it because everyone seemed to be jumping into it, that didn't have a good strategic reason for it, that didn't have it connect to their core, that didn't see it as improving their service to their customer, that didn't see it as creating a more efficient supply chain, that didn't see it as a way to motivate and make their employees more productive, but instead saw it as a way to kind of make their brand seem better, or something that they just felt good about. That's going to go. And those companies will eventually figure out how to think about this framework in a way that will be strategic for them. But for some, it's not so obvious.
So who leads this effort in companies? Is it a CEO? Is it a team? What's your experience of the way that this gets done when it's done correctly?
I've seen it work in a lot of different ways. I mean, the CEO, the board, the chairperson needs to be engaged. That is certainly a criteria for success. They need to establish that this is a corporate priority and say that over and over and over again. Inside the organization, it really doesn't matter who leads it in terms of their rank or frankly their position in the organization. I've seen successful examples of this within the strategy group, within the HR group, within marketing, within manufacturing, so it comes from different places. The one criteria of that leader, that core instigator, is that there's someone who can deliver business results in the company. So someone who is very literate in the terms of environmental sustainability, who knows about ecology, isn't necessarily the right person. They might be a good expert resource, but they probably frequently are a decoy to the person who can actually create the business value out of these set of ideas. And instead, you'd want to go to the person who led your last major change initiative. You'd want to go to the person who launched your last product line. You want to go to the last person who brings in for you victories and say to them, this is our challenge, I want you to take it on like this. Some of the best sustainability leaders that I know are ones who really, before beginning it, had no concern whatsoever for the environment. It just wasn't top on their priority list.
Okay. Nope. Adam Werbach, fighting the good fight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.